What's up, Rockstars, and welcome to my cage match video of the boss battlers Primal versus Monster Hunter World. Both are inspired, obviously, by Monster Hunter style monster hunting, but which one is right for you? What are the differences? What are the similarities? We'll answer all of that right now. Now, as always, and I can't stress this enough, a huge shout out to my patrons and YouTube members. It is videos just like this where I can tell you my honest, raw, unfiltered, honest opinion, and not my wallet's opinion, because I don't take any game company's money, is only because of them. It is definitely a community-driven channel here, and if you are willing and able to support, there is a link down below. But if not, that's fine too, I understand. Even just a like, a comment, a subscription, all of that actually does help, and I love hearing and discussing things with you anyway, so we all win in the end if you do that as well. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and actually just jump right into it. And I guess first I'm going to frame this by just saying that I'm only doing Primal and Monster Hunter World. I know several people wanted all kinds of different things, right? Because there's so many boss battlers. There's Tenaris, there's Oathsworn, there's a lot out there, okay? The boss battler genre has exploded. There's Alien Trespass Odyssey. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Townsfolk Tussle even. I mean, there's been a ton. Even just lately, there's been a lot. So, I decided, no, I'm just doing these two. And really it's because of how direct of a comparison they are, because they both are inspired by the same thing, essentially. And, you know, one officially licensed and one just kind of taking inspiration from it. And, they were both very recently, Primal just recently did this, and then now Monster Hunter World is just about to come on. And, by the way, there's a link down below to the unboxings and the reviews that I have of both of them, because I'm one of the few people, I guess, that have actually played both. That, you know, not just looking at it on kid, but actually like hands-on. I've played both now. I've reviewed both. And there's actually a lot more different than I thought there was going to be. I was worried, if you recall, way back when we first heard about all this, that they were going to be almost the same game. There was like, they're both card-driven and they're both using combo card systems. And, you know, it just seemed really similar, right? So I'm like, how different are these really? Way different. Way different. Way different. And I will tell you exactly why. So let's go ahead and actually start, though, with the similarities. So I have my notes here. I'm going to make sure I get all the points that I've jotted down for you guys, and we'll just kind of go through it. So first of all, they're both boss battlers. Now, what is a boss battler? I guess I'll define that very quickly. The boss battler genre kind of spawned up mostly around Kingdom Death Monster. There was probably some exceptions and some examples, but for the most part, it's kind of modeled after that Kingdom Death Monster idea of you fight a big boss that has its kind of an AI behavior deck of some kind. And, you know, that's like the main draw. And then normally there's a side thing as well that you do, in the background, in the meta of a campaign or something like that. And Kingdom of the Monster, it's, you know, the whole village and your survivors and upgrades and story events and that sort of stuff. In both of these, they also have kind of a little side thing where you can, you know, craft gear and, you know, kind of read some story bits and stuff like that. I'll go into, because they do it differently, so I'll go to that in the differences. But suffice it to say, a boss battler has mostly one enemy, or at least one stage that you fight a group of enemies on, or something like that, right? Sometimes they can have ads, or, you know, 3 of them at once, or, you know, whatever. That have a kind of a behavior AI deck. Often you can attack different body parts, and different body parts can get damaged. And then the AI system's a little bit more advanced, something like a dungeon crawler, where it's just like, they go to the nearest target, and then they attack that, and then they do this. And normally it's like, it sees that you're kind of, you know, alone, so it's going to do this and snipe you out because you're also weak. Or, you know, you hit it in its leg, and it hurt its leg at a certain threshold, it's going to react to that and do things differently there. Or it's going to counterattack your attacks, and that's pretty much the boss battler, and they're both that, at least, how it's laid out, right? Where you have the boss battle arena with the big baddie that you're fighting, and then the side thing. So that's mainly the thing there. And then the idea is they also have kind of more advanced AI around that as well. So both have that, obviously. They both have various town things that you can do in town. So both of them have essentially a town phase afterwards that you can do certain things, whether it's talk to certain NPCs or take on certain quests or craft certain gear or do some trades or heal up or whatever it is. Each one offers slightly different things, but it's the same kind of idea. And all of it in both games is meta in that you're not actually on a game board where like, I'm going to go to the town area and I'm going to talk to this. And like, it's just, oh yeah, okay, we'll go sell and I'll sell this. And that's it. It's all kind of in the head meta there. That none of them like really invest in that. I say that because there are boss battlers that have, a whole city map or all these village cards or all these research stations on a big ship or, whatever it might be. And that's not even really here either. You might have like a certain helper, like a crafting card or something like that. But for the most part, it's you fight the boss and that's the game that you're playing with physical components. And then you sit back and kind of talk about what you're doing in the village or in the story section. Both include fewer miniatures, but many of them are large. Now, I'm going to go and show you some of them. So here's like, I'll show you them side by side maybe a little bit. So here is Monster Hunter World. And here is Primal. So you can kind of see, the only difference, and that's probably the only difference I'll mention here, is that Primal has sculpted bases, whereas Monster Hunter World and Steamforged Games doesn't really do that. So they're flat bases. Both have the 4 sections on the side for the different, facings and whatnot. And as you can see, fairly same in perhaps size-wise-ish. Primal might actually have a little bit more because I know they get bigger than that, but I'm assuming Monster Hunter World gets bigger than that too. So kind of hard to tell, but kind of similar. I might like the Primal design maybe a bit more. I think they can be a little bit more fanciful in their designs because they're not withheld from an IP, but either way, you're not getting like 27 zombies with 2 sculpts each or, some stupid junk like that. You're getting almost all unique sculpts. You're getting these big minis. And then, of course, these little hero characters, these hunter characters that you control. But you're getting fewer of them, of course, as well. So they're both kind of structured that way. Don't expect to get a boatload of minis in either of them. They both share a common style too. So again, they're taking inspiration from the kind of Monster Hunter genre, and a lot of that has like these huge weapons. Like the weapons are the size of the person, if not larger. So gigantic bows, or big old great swords that are weigh like 500 pounds, and they're swinging them like nobody's business, or that sort of over the top actiony kind of feel to it. I'm assuming you're fairly familiar with the Monster Hunter IP, or at least you've seen it before to kind of know what I'm talking about. They even have like a movie now you could go watch, I guess. So, I mean, like, it's been around for like 17 years. It's been around for a long time. So, and it's a whole style. There are other games like that, especially from Japan, where they have these gigantic, oversized weapons, over ridiculous weapons. You can think of like Cloud's Buster Sword from Final Fantasy VII as kind of an example of that. But Monster Hunter goes even farther, at least that IP, and both of these games go farther than the Buster Sword as well when it comes to this sheer ridiculous size of their weapons. So it's very over-the-top action-y kind of theme that they both have. And of course, they're both card driven, right? I mean, like at the end of the day, when you're actually sitting there playing it, yeah, they're structured the same, but every dungeon crawler is structured the same, but there are dungeon crawlers that have dice. And then there's stuff like Gloomhaven where it's, all card driven. And then there's stuff like Oko Chronicles where it's like reactionaries. I mean, there's a ton of different stuff you can do, right? There's like dexterity versions. So structure is one thing, right? But they actually have cards that you have a hand and you have a card and you're laying down cards to attack the boss in a certain kind of combo. And then the boss attacks you and kind of reacts to that. And, they're both like, if you're coming here for dice, you're not going to like either of these games. Like, it's just not going to happen. It's not the case. There's nothing here for you. I'm sorry. But, really at the end of the day, that's kind of it for similarities. Like, I'm going to be completely honest here. After this, they diverge like this. Like, they're completely different. They're aiming to fulfill different needs, different wants, different desires, different niches, different placements on your shelf. And let's go ahead and I guess discuss all the differences. Okay, so one of the big differences is that Primal boasts a much more advanced scenario system. Much more advanced. Almost night and day difference. Where you have like destructible environments and advanced terrain features and terrain placement and way more different types of terrain and stuff. So when you're setting up a scenario in the unique kind of situation there are a lot more variety of scenarios that you can actually set up in Primal over Monster Hunter World, which has less terrain and doesn't even have like a terrain placement feature, like for instance, a dragon breathes fire and now suddenly there's fire everywhere, right? All that kind of stuff. They might introduce something like that, but at least, and actually I should have said this at the beginning, but I'm only talking the prototype here, right? I'm only talking right now, as I filmed, this is what they have in their rulebooks. This is what they have in their prototypes. This is what they've shown us, right? Now, Primal's already had the benefit of going through Kickstarter, whereas, Monster Hunter World hasn't. However, really, Primal didn't change at all during the Kickstarter, like what they handed me in the prototype. And that's really what I'm comparing here is my experience with them. Not even necessarily future promises, though if they promised something that countered this, I would say it, but they haven't. So, neither company has yet, so. Definitely more advanced scenarios and more unique scenarios set up in Primal just based off of just the amount of availability of stuff there and the variables there. There's stuff like plants you can actually harvest in there, or areas where you can heal, or all that kind of, a lot more boss battler type, right? Even Townsfolk Tussle and even lighter boss battlers like that have, little terrain you can interact with, or you can hide behind a rock, or you can jump off a plateau, or you can, go to the healing herbs, or, whatever it might be. There's a very light amount in Monster Hunter World. They have ponds where you have to discard a damage card, which is kind of odd thematically that you discard a damage card, but whatever, that's what you do, okay? And a bush hide lowers your threat level a little bit, and really that's it. So again, very divergent, right? One is a lot more of a lighter, simplistic boss battler, and one is a lot more of a more advanced, nuanced, kind of meteor kind of style game. And there's purposes for both, of course, but definitely the biggest difference there, and the first one I wanted to mention. Primal provides an overall story mode, whereas Monster Hunter World doesn't. So if you're wanting like lasting campaign decisions in a story that'll affect who you're fighting against, that's Primal. Primal, when you go through the story campaign, you won't even fight all of the bosses. You'll have to make decisions and do this versus that. You can make decisions in Monster Hunter World, but there's not like a big story campaign. Even when you're exploring and you're reading the little blips and stuff like that, it's much more casual kind of, okay, you went on a fork of the road. Do you turn left or right? I turn left. Okay, there's a cave and there's also footprints. What do you investigate? The cave. Okay, you do that. But nothing you do there is going to affect the next one you go into, or, a campaign wide what the end boss is, or anything like that. At least what they've shown, again, there's not really a overarching story. It's very kind of, you pick a quest, you get to the quest objective, and then that's what you do, and that's it. So, if you're wanting narrative, Primal is definitely where you're going to edge towards there. Whereas, again, Monster Hunter World just doesn't really offer something like that. Again, it's a lot lighter in many, many senses. Monster Hunter World has way more looting features. They have like a loot table you're rolling on, and you roll 2 dice, and you get to pick whether you're getting those two that you rolled, or combining them to get one. And then if you're hacking off parts, you get free loot based off that loot table, so you can take that into account too while you're fighting the boss. And then you can trade those items in for other items, and then there's a whole swath of gear that you can combine and change things with. And while you're exploring, you can get gear and choose to go mine stuff or do different stuff like that. Whether it's in the exploration or in the town phase, you can also choose to go and actually mine and gather bones and stuff like that. So there's a lot of options and a lot more oomph in the loot getting in Monster Hunter World. So definitely that's a big difference there. They both have loot and they both have crafting, and they're both enjoyable. But Monster Hunter World, that's where it shines there. That is like its meat and potatoes and a side of ice cream sundae. I don't know where I'm going with that, but there's a good food there that you want to eat. There's really good food, but it's just all right in Primal. Definitely a lighter touch to the loot kind of grind. Whereas you almost have too much. You're like, oh my gosh, I have like 27 items and I just fought one guy, right? I mean, that's Monster Hunter World. There's a lot there, so definitely loot oriented there. Primal has a smaller footprint, so they're both boss battlers, but because Primal abstracts the movement to just be its kind of core decision point, so you're making the same decisions, and like I said, actually you're making a lot more decisions in Primal because of the different terrain, but it's really just the boss that turns, and then you that kind of go around it, versus a big board where you move around it via multiple pieces, and the boss turns and moves towards you in multiple pieces. Either way you're moving and turning, it's just broken out a lot more in Primal. So, and actually based off how the movement is in Primal, it's pretty much a 1-to-1 where you can, kind of turn around or whatever, or you cannot. But it's pretty much the same thing, but the footprint is a lot smaller. Instead of time cards where you're moving in, so there's a time deck, there's just a slider on the side that denotes the turn order in Primal, and then, based off how good you do or how quick you do, stuff can happen in the story. Or different rewards might, show up or whatever it might be. But it's just a much smaller footprint. And then you're also not laying so many cards around your player card area as well. And so the player character area, which sometimes that can get really bloated in games, again, much smaller in Primal. So Primal honestly can fit in a fairly small table. You could play it almost on a coffee table as 2-player. I bet you could actually do that. Because again, the board is just you and then, the boss and 4 areas around it, plus the timer, and then you got your little section there, and they got a little section there, and there you go. You got some tokens somewhere, you're good to go, you can play Primal. I mean, that, the boss has a little area too, I suppose, but it's just like 3-4 decks. It's not that bad. Much smaller footprint on Primal. Both have about the same setup time. Primal might eke out a little bit less, just because, again, there's less to kind of deal with. But and you don't have like the damage cards and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. It's just, again, Primal, smaller footprint. By a good enough worth noting in this video, I suppose. By a fair margin, it's smaller. It could fit in pretty much just the board area of Monster Hunter World. So movement is very different in each game. So in Primal, you can pick and interact with different terrain on a map. I kind of mentioned this before, so you can go to this area here that has this healing herb and decide to heal, but you left the area that had rocks where you could hide from behind the rocks to actually hide, and the rock would take some damage, but then the rock is destroyed and stuff like that. So you're moving around, but you're not moving nearly as much. You're moving essentially one area each time. And so you can only change facing once generally. There are ways that you can get from the front to the back of the boss. But for the most part, you're moving from area that has abilities to area that has abilities, right? And you're kind of going to and from that. If you think about, let's just take, really, I guess any Kingdom of Death, and Trespass Odyssey, Towns of Tuxel, you have all those things on the map you can sometimes do stuff with. It's like you're picking, I want to be here, or I want to be here, or I want to be there. And those are the ones you're picking. And those spaces in between where you're on your way to it are typically kind of gone. Unless you picked the one on the far end, and again, you can only move one zone, so you're on the way there. For instance, I played one that had a plateau with some water, some lakes in front of it. So I had to go through the lake to get to the plateau, right? And so that's on my way there. But it's pretty much point of interest based. Whereas Monster Hunter World, you can, really kind of, I'll start going there, though you're almost 100% based off of the facing of the boss and what side of the boss you want to be on. There's not really a sense of I want to go to this terrain piece, because like I said, the terrain pieces aren't anything really. They're barely worth mentioning. They could be taken out of the game, and I think it'd be just fine. The bush maybe a little bit less, but whatever. What you're doing is I want to be on the side of the boss, or I want to be in the back of the boss, or the front of the boss. You're deciding between those 3 points. In Monster Hunter World, you're just doing a lot more movement to get there, I guess. But that means you can have ranged attacks. So one of the things that Primal is missing is the ability to do ranged attacks. They have a bow person, but there's no close range versus long range. One of the first things you get in Monster Hunter World for the bow person is a card that allows you to fight from 3 away, which means you can be the farthest, and if you know that the boss is attacking the closest, you can just snipe all you want. But you can do extra damage if you're point blank. And so you could go right up there, right next to them, and do that long range shot at point blank, and it does extra damage. So you have that whole idea or concept isn't even really possible in Primal, just based off of the abstract movement style that they have. There's just no sense of ranged at all. And so that's definitely something you can do in Monster Hunter World, is play a ranged character that's actually ranged. And it feels like that too. It's debatable in the video game whether I'm just shooting, I might as well be close or far, whatever. But in a board game, I think it makes a little bit more sense anyway. So there is that too. So movement and what that means for your characters is way different in both of them. I guess the only big difference, again, that I'd like to mention is that Monster Hunter World's combat is lighter and more casual than Primal. Like I said, Primal is a much beefier game. There's a lot more advanced mechanics. Like you can go on a terrain piece called a plateau to then decide, and you can just be on there, or to get like a height buff and stuff like that, or you can actually choose to jump onto the monster. And if you jump on the monster, then there's this whole other mechanic you can do to essentially attack the monster when it's trying to do its moves and distract the monster so it doesn't actually attack. So you can be on there, but you can be bucked off too, and then when you're bucked off, you may land a different. Like there's what I just described is so much more advanced mechanically than anything I saw in Monster Hunter World, like by far, right? So Monster Hunter World, really the boss is just moving and attacking, and then you're deciding, do I defend or not? And then it's your turn and you decide, do I attack or rest? And then the boss goes and moves and attacks, and you just repeat that until one of you is dead. And then you're either won or you lost. And then you go to the next one. It does kind of the same thing. But it'll be more resistant, so you need to upgrade your gear to do more damage. And that's mostly it. There's a little bit of like defense play in there as well, but for the most part, you're going to get hurt bad no matter what. And you just kind of have to, go through the motions, of doing that. But that's really it. You're not deciding like, oh, if I go on this terrain, then I can do this to that, and that does that unique mechanic to where then I can do this so that it bypasses this whole mechanic that's normally always part of the game. Like, no, you've already left Monster Hunter World and you found yourself in Primal. So very different, weight to each game as well. Which brings me to what is right for you. And I'm just going to kind of list off some things. Like, if this is important to you, then this might be what you want. If this is bad for you, then don't back this one. Right? Yeah, I can word it either way. I guess there's no real rhyme or reason to it. It's whatever I thought of in my head. So if you want a narrative campaign, then Primal is the one for you. Go pick Primal. If you want a story, pick Primal. Do not pick Monster Hunter World for a story. You're not going to get it. You're going to be sad. Neither of them are very story heavy. Neither of these are, Tainted Grail. Neither of these are Oathsworn, right? Neither of these are like some like big, long epic campaign that you're going to remember the story from for years to come and tell your friends about that cool story event that happened and introduce this new mechanic. Like, again, you're playing the wrong genre at that point almost. There's a few exceptions, like I said, but definitely not these two games. Neither of them are super story heavy, but Primal does have a campaign and does have campaign choices that matter and does have lasting choices that matter. And, an actual like story event, an overarching story that's happening that you're kind of reacting to, as opposed to there's a monster nearby, go attack it randomly because you picked this quest off the quest board, which is all of Monster Hunter World's story. Congratulations, you now know the story. I don't even know if they bother with that, really. At least from what I had, they didn't. So definitely pick Primal if you want a story. Additionally, if you want pretty art, then Primal's one for you. One of the differences I didn't quite mention is because it's not really gameplay related, but Monster Hunter World uses the video game art, and it's on like a black background, and it's ugly, and it's actively kind of terrible. The art in Primal is something I absolutely adore, which is kind of ironic how different they are. If you've played Guild Wars 2 or seen kind of Guild Wars 2 art style, very much like that for Primal. So very pretty art there. Where, and it's a lot lighter, right? It kind of has like a light tan beige kind of card, and then it has like bright red or bright green or bright blue and splashes of color there. It's a much brighter and more artistic game than Monster Hunter World, which is very much hey, we're Monster Hunter World IP game, so here's straight rips from the renders, and we threw it on a black background, and There you go. That's it. At least that's it right now. It could change. But for now, you definitely want Primal if you want kind of like brightness and art and prettiness. The board art of Monster Hunter World is really good, but that's only part of it. If you don't want abstract movement, do not pick Primal. Like I said, now, really what Primal did is they distilled what you're doing. Like I said, in Monster Hunter World, your decision is, do I want to be on the left, do I want to be in the front, or do I want to be on the back of the boss? And that's your decision. And Primal, it's more the same thing, except actually there's a lot more to it, because it's like, well, I want to be in the back, but I also don't want to leave the rock thing here, because I know he's going to do a strong attack next. But I could just go over there and heal. Maybe if I healed up one, it would negate any damage that it would do there. And maybe I could heal my next turn before I leave. Or, like there's all of these options available to you, but it is abstract in that it's just a boss spinning around, right? I think of it in my head visually as like the image of like, the Neanderthals against the mammoth, and they're all surrounding the mammoth with their little spears, and the mammoth is turning around, trying to figure out who to charge, and they're circling around. Like, that's how I imagine is kind of circling around the boss as you kind of, fight and figure out, who, because you're the hunter, right? Just like the Neanderthal and the mammoth. That's what I think in my head. You can think whatever you want. Either way, it is a little bit more abstract. So if you want, I'm moving to the left and I'm moving around, like, again, Primal's not going to get that. It's just one movement. Bam, done. I'm in that sector. That's what they call it there. It's a zone. It's a pizza. So, definitely don't pick Primal if you don't want abstract. Though, I would take a look at it and then, again, keep in mind kind of what I said and see if it still does it for you. Normally, I'm not abstract anything. I hate abstract games. I'm here with these fancy little physical pieces that I'm spending hundreds of dollars on to kind of get lost in a world, and abstract tends to kill that for me. It worked for Primal for me. Maybe it will for you, but something to keep in mind, definitely. If you love lots of loot and crafting, Monster Hunter World is a winner, no doubt about it. Go get that. If that is your drive and the means of getting it, you don't mind if it's a lighter system or a heavier system or whatever, and Monster Hunter World, like by far, like the exploration of that, where you're getting all these different things and you want more loot, but you don't want the track tokens and you maybe don't want to get hurt, but maybe you'll find something cool next and, oh man, what's that shiny thing over there? And it's really good. It is. And then you get to roll on that loot table, that sweet, sweet loot table. Crafting, Monster Hunter World, go for broke. You're going to love it. Seriously, and I'm a loot whore. Like, I love looter shooters and ARPGs and stuff like that, where you're the gear grind, right? That I love. So, definitely Monster Hunter World in there. They both have it, and like, Primal's no slouch here, but whew, man, yeah, Monster Hunter World does that and it nails it. Does a really good job with that. If you want a casual boss battler, then Monster Hunter World is a clear winner, and that's not something to, I guess, sniff at, right? I think a lot of times there's elitism in people where they're just like, oh, that game is so simple, right? It's a chess versus checkers thing, right? It's like a checkers. Who wants that? But checkers might have a good spot for somebody who just wants a quick game where they can just have fun and interact with somebody and not have to like get a headache or because they, thought, 15 levels and deep into like a logic tree of like, well, if I go here and then do that and then they do that and then suddenly you're into next Tuesday and, well, you know what? Their personality is like this. And so they're going to like, it's not like some people don't always want that. I don't always want that. I want a selection. One of the reasons I have Zombicide in my game collection is because it's quick, simple, easy fun. It is not the best game. It is not a 10 out of 10. It's not super strategic. It's a little bit. But you know what? It gets to the table quickly, everybody enjoys it, and it is fun. And sometimes that's all I want. Sometimes I just want a casual time where I can order some pizza, we can grab some soda or, your drink of preference, we can plop it on the table and shoot some zombies. Like that. Sometimes that's all I want. And so I love having games I can play with my kids, games I can play with my parents, games I can just play when it's a spur of the moment. Hey, you want to play a war game? Yeah, sure. What do you want? That's when Zombicide is coming out. It's, hey, we're going to play a game on Saturday. You're going to come over. We're going to invite it. We're going to have this big thing. That's when I start setting up Joan of Arc 3 days ahead of time, right? I mean, like, you have different levels of games. Boss battlers are almost universally heavy games. You can think of them close to 4X games. They're not, I mean, you know, they're not torture, right? They're not terrible, but I'm kidding. But like they're heavier, heftier games. A lot of them are very campaign driven. So you're 15 game sessions into a campaign and it's this big old song and dance thing. And so to get a lighter game, it's one of the reasons I like Townsfolk Tussle so much, was because it was kind of a lighter boss battler. It was still enjoyable and there was a little bit of a campaign. Monster Hunter World's very similar. It's a more casual experience, but it's a little bit of a campaign too, and you get that boss battle feel, and you get to craft and get stronger, do all that. But it's one of those things where you can just throw it on the table and play it, and you're not going to have to worry too much about it. You don't have to like. There's less weight to it, and that can be a benefit for it. So if you have Kingdom Death Monster, and you're going to get Alien Trespass Policy, and you have Oathsworn, and you have all these other like big old box, heavy duty boss battles. Like, I just want a casual one. I can like still fight a boss and still have some fun. Monster Hunter World is definitely your pick there. So I wanted to explain that because I think people will say light, right? And instantly think negative. And that's fine. Maybe you don't want anything like that at all. But I think there is a place in that, at least for most people on a game shelf. Now, whether this one is right for you or you want a light game that isn't that light, or, you know, maybe you still want some oomph in your boss battler, then, you know, maybe that's not the pick for you. But you could make the judge of that. That's why I'm just telling you what my experience is and hoping I can match you up, right? I'm hitching you guys up here. If you are sensitive to downtime, Monster Hunter World is not your pick. So Monster Hunter World has that stamina bar system, essentially, right? Where you're playing your cards, and then you slowly kind of recover your stamina. It's very mimicking of the game, right? Where I dodged rolled too much, or I swung my big old sword too much, now I have to kind of wait. Except the waiting takes a little bit longer in the board game because it's a lot slower, right? In the video game, you just kind of take a break and you're running around in circles or whatever. And in the board game, you're just like, that's my turn. It's my other turn. I'm going to move a little bit away. That's my turn. like that's it, right? Like it goes really quick. We either do nothing or next to nothing, right? Either you want to be a little bit farther away from them, or you don't care and you just want to discard a card. So there's almost like, it's almost brain dead. It's like, I just gotta wait. So there's that inbuilt kind of wait your turn mechanic where you essentially have lost turns. And if you're sensitive to that, like I am, then that'll probably be a part you will not like about the game. I really, it bothered me a lot. My wife, she didn't care at all. She was like, all right, I'll wait and I'll do this because then I'll have this epic turn afterwards, you know, and she was fine with it. But me, it really bothered me. I don't like feeling like I've wasted time. And even on a turn, if all I did was nothing, like that really bothers me in a game. So I can understand that. So that's why I want to mention to you guys, if you're sensitive to that, and if that would be a problem in your head where you're like, I didn't do anything, even though you're recovering, and you know, that's thematic, and I get that. And at the end of the turn, none of these turns are quick or slow, right? It'll be your turn here in a bit. But I'm impatient. Anyway, if you are sensitive to that, Monster Hunter World is something you might want to be cautious about because it's definitely a thing. There are ways to kind of get it a little bit quicker, and you can just deal with only playing 2 cards every turn if that's what you want to do, but you shouldn't because you're going to want to be able to dodge too, but once you dodge, then you're tired again and you got to anyway. Definitely not that. So, personal pick. What's my personal pick? My personal pick is Primal. I loved Primal a lot. I wish I could share how enjoyable the terrain setup is in Primal with you guys, because I still see so many people like, you're just turning a mini around, and it's actually, it makes me kind of snicker a little bit because you guys have no idea what you're talking about. Which is fine. I mean, you haven't played it, right? You can only judge it based off that, or maybe it could be an ounce of credit. I don't know, but like, it's just so funny, to see that because it is so enjoyable. I actually plan on getting both. My wife, by the way, vastly preferred Monster Hunter World. She liked the kind of, I'm just going to go smack it in the face and it's going to smack me in the face, kind of like, you know, club fight, and loved the loot. And again, I loved the loot too. Definitely the highlight for me was the loot on that. So both are really enjoyable. And again, they're very different games. So you might just be not interested in one versus the other. Like, I do not need another boss battler that's kind of a hefty, I have plenty of those. Or maybe it's, I have no need for a lightweight boss battler. Like, I don't even know why you would have such a thing. That's fine too. Maybe it's like, you know what? I can use both. And that was kind of nice, actually, because I was worried when they were first shown that they were going to be really close together. But they're not. They're not. Like I said, and like I showed, they diverge greatly and really fit two different purposes on your board game shelf. So anyway, my preference was Primal. I really liked the card play. I liked being able to jump on top of the monster and doing that and hiding behind rocks and having those rocks broken. And I was jumping on the monster and doing all sorts of damage on him until he headbutt the the plateau and broke it. And I'm like, oh, gosh darn, now I can't do that. And then of course he'd leave fire down everywhere and I had to, deal with, running around in the fire, and loved it. Loved that style of gameplay a lot. I'm typically a bit of a heavier kind of gamer when it comes to that. I don't dabble too much into the light, but I do need them for stuff like that, and I do need ones I still enjoy, right? And that's why I have Zombicide. And that's why I'll have Monster Hunter as well. But it again just depends on what you need. So anyway, I hope I helped you out. If I did, let me know. Let me know either with a like, or if you do so kindly do, leave a comment so I can see how this was helpful to you. If I should be doing more cage matches in the future. If you have an idea of a cage match, I'm all ears. Let me know. A lot of these, this one was by request. A lot of these are by request. If you guys are looking and thinking this or that, let me know. And I'll see what I can do about comparing them just like this. So hopefully this video was helpful for you. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day. You deserve it. You guys are all rock stars, to me anyway. And I greatly appreciate you being here. All right, guys, have a great day.